A wise teacher once noticed something interesting about his students. The ones who spoke the most were often the ones who understood the least. Meanwhile, the students who listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and observed before speaking usually learned the fastest. Years later, many of those quiet students became successful in their own fields. The teacher eventually realized something profound. Speaking can reveal what you know, but listening often determines how much you will learn. Today, I want to talk about a habit that many people never examine closely. It is not laziness. It is not anger. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is excessive talking. At first glance, talking seems harmless. After all, communication is essential. Human beings connect through conversation. Relationships grow through dialogue. Ideas spread through words. But like many things in life, even a good thing can become harmful when taken too far. Have you ever met someone who seems uncomfortable with silence? The moment a conversation slows down, they immediately fill the space. They tell another story. They explain something nobody asked about. They jump from topic to topic without realizing they are doing it. Sometimes they leave conversations wondering why people seem distant or uninterested, never recognizing the role their own behavior played. What makes this topic fascinating is that people rarely talk too much because they have too much to say. More often, they talk too much because something deeper is happening beneath the surface. The words are simply symptoms. The real causes are often emotional, psychological, and sometimes even unconscious. Psychology suggests that communication is not just about exchanging information. It is also about meeting emotional needs. People use conversations to seek validation, reassurance, belonging, attention, approval, or a sense of significance. Sometimes a person who constantly talks is actually trying to satisfy one of these needs without realizing it. Think about someone who constantly explains every decision they make. They explain why they bought something. They explain why they chose a certain career path. They explain why they arrived late. They explain their opinions in great detail. To an outside observer, it can feel exhausting. Yet beneath all those explanations is often a desire to feel understood and accepted. The challenge is that the more desperately someone seeks validation through words, the less effective those words often become. People tend to trust confidence more than constant explanation. A person who feels secure rarely feels the need to justify every action. This is why excessive talking sometimes reveals insecurity rather than confidence. Society often assumes that the loudest person is the most self-assured. In reality, that is not always true. Many confident people speak very little because they do not feel pressured to convince others of their worth. Consider the difference between certainty and insecurity. When someone is secure in who they are, they can allow their actions to speak for them. They do not need endless explanations. They do not need to win every argument. They do not feel threatened by silence. They understand that their value is not dependent on constant verbal proof. On the other hand, insecurity often creates a constant urge to fill every gap with words. Silence starts to feel uncomfortable because silence leaves room for uncertainty. And uncertainty can feel threatening to someone who constantly seeks reassurance. There's another reason people talk too much, and it is surprisingly common. Some people use conversation as a way to avoid self-reflection. As long as they are talking, they do not have to sit quietly with their own thoughts. Many philosophers have emphasized the importance of solitude and reflection. Epictetus once encouraged people to spend more time examining themselves rather than constantly seeking external stimulation. Self-awareness grows in moments of reflection, not constant noise. Yet modern life makes reflection increasingly difficult. Notifications, social media, endless content, and constant communication leave very little room for silence. Many people become so accustomed to noise that they forget how valuable quiet moments can be. The irony is that silence often teaches us more than speaking. When you stop talking, you start observing. You notice details you previously missed. You hear what people are actually saying instead of simply waiting for your turn to respond. This brings us to one of the most important lessons in communication. Listening is not passive, it is an active skill. Truly listening requires patience, attention, curiosity, and emotional discipline. Unfortunately, many conversations are not really conversations at all. They are two people taking turns talking about themselves while waiting for opportunities to speak again. If you pay attention, you will notice this pattern everywhere. Someone shares a personal experience, and instead of exploring that person's perspective, the listener immediately redirects the conversation toward their own story. Over time, this habit can damage relationships. People naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel heard. They appreciate individuals who genuinely listen and engage thoughtfully. One reason certain people become trusted friends, respected leaders, or valued mentors is not because they always have the best answers. It is because they create space for others to express themselves. Here is something worth considering. Every time you dominate a conversation, you learn very little. Every time you listen carefully, you gain access to information, perspectives, and experiences that you did not possess before. This is why some of the wisest individuals throughout history were known for asking thoughtful questions rather than delivering endless speeches. Curiosity often leads to growth far more effectively than constant talking. Another hidden cost of talking too much is that it can weaken your influence. This may sound surprising, but words become more valuable when they are used intentionally. Imagine receiving 10 messages every hour from the same person. Eventually, those messages lose impact. Now imagine hearing from someone who speaks carefully and thoughtfully. Their words naturally carry greater weight because they are not diluted by excess. The same principle applies in everyday life. People tend to pay closer attention when someone communicates with purpose instead of speaking simply to fill silence. There is a reason many respected leaders, negotiators, and thinkers are comfortable with pauses. They understand that silence is not an enemy. Silence creates space for reflection and understanding. If you struggle with talking too much, do not judge yourself harshly. This habit is often developed over many years. The goal is not to become silent or withdrawn. The goal is to become more intentional. Start by noticing your patterns. Do you interrupt people? Do you overshare personal details too quickly? Do you explain things repeatedly? Do you feel anxious during moments of silence? Awareness is always the first step toward change. You cannot improve a habit you refuse to observe. Once you begin noticing these patterns, challenge yourself to pause more often. Before speaking, ask yourself whether your words are adding value to the conversation or simply filling space. This small adjustment can completely change the quality of your communication. Conversations become more balanced. Relationships become stronger. People feel more respected and understood. Another helpful practice is developing genuine curiosity about others. Instead of focusing on what you want to say next, focus on understanding the person in front of you. Ask meaningful questions. Listen carefully to the answers. Pay attention to emotions, not just words. You may be surprised by how much deeper conversations become. The more you listen, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more thoughtful your future contributions become. Communication begins to feel less like performance and more like connection. Something interesting also happens internally. As you become comfortable with silence, you become more comfortable with yourself. You stop relying on constant conversation to manage discomfort. This creates a sense of calm confidence that others can feel. You no longer speak because you fear silence. You speak because you have something meaningful to contribute. And when that shift occurs, people start responding differently to you. They listen more carefully. They value your perspective more highly. They feel more respected in your presence. The goal is not to say as little as possible. The goal is to ensure that your words have purpose. A meaningful sentence often carries more impact than 100 unnecessary ones. As this conversation begins to draw to a close, remember that communication is not measured by how much you say. It is measured by how effectively you connect, understand, and contribute. Some of the most powerful people you will ever meet are not the loudest voices in the room. They are the people who know when to speak, when to listen, and when silence is the wiser choice. So the next time you find yourself rushing to fill every quiet moment, pause for a second. Give yourself permission to listen. Give others room to be heard. You may discover that the strongest voice is not always the one speaking the most. If this video gave you a new perspective, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Like the video, share it with someone who would benefit from this message, and subscribe for more life lessons, psychology insights, and conversations designed to help you grow into your best self.